This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Shalom Aleichem, good morning. Welcome to the viewers of Torah Anytime. Mitzvah Hashem. We'll speak about Parshas Vayakhel, many matters related to Shabbos, Parshas Vayakhel, and Parshas Para. I want to dedicate this year to the Atzlach Ben Zion Mendoza, him and his family. Refuah Shalema. Emma Mazal Bas Lealuba. Mitzvah Hashem should have a Refuah Shalem Besoch Sh'ar Choylei Yisrael. Next week, in Mitzvah Hashem, we will have a shir, and thereafter we'll have a little Ben Azmanim break, unfortunately, and our shir will resume the beginning of Iyar and the Parshos Tazria Metzoira, which this year are connected. So we dive into Parshas Vayakhel. First pasuk. Vayakhel Moshe Eskol Adas Bnei Yisrael. When was this? What date?
After Yom Kippur.
Who told you? Were you there? Rashi. Vayakhel Moshe lemochas Yom Kippurim. One day after Yom Kippur. But why? Why now? Why specifically one day after Yom Kippur? Says that Moshe of Kubrin. Moshe wanted to send a very strong message to Klal Yisrael. A day before, yesterday, Yom Kippur, everybody was united. We all are in shul for 25 hours. We look like malachim. And we ask Hashem to forgive us. So we work on ourselves, not only between Adam Lamakoim, but also between Adam Lachavero. And we show tremendous unity. What Achdus? Says Moshe Rabbeinu, guess what? Even one day after Yom Kippur, you can still be an Achdus. So Vayakhel, he gathered everybody to tell them, after Yom Kippur, you can still work on Achdus. It's fine. You don't have to drop it as soon as Motzi Yom Kippur hits and you run back home and you eat. You can still maintain Achdus. Now, we're not necessarily going to go according to the order, so we're jumping 6 psukim ahead. Pasuk Zayin, and tell me if there's a built-in contradiction within the pasuk. Ve'amelacha haisa dayam lechol hamelacha la'asos oisa ve'hoiser. Doesn't work. You're saying there was just enough. It was perfect. And by the way, there was extra. So what is it? Was there more than enough, or was there enough? That means it was just the right amount that they brought for the Mishkan. Excellent. But the pasuk continues. That means you left over, you have extra. So did you have extra, or did you have exactly the same? They don't work together. Sha'al of the Or Chaim HaKodesh. He says, Shnei hafachim. They contradict each other. It can be because you have dayam, you don't have hoiser. If you have hoiser, you don't have dayam. How can they coexist within the same pasuk? Says the Or Chaim HaKodesh, you see from here how dear Klal Yisrael were to HaKodesh Baruch Hu. Lemaise, they brought much more than needed. V'hoiser, the pasuk indicates they brought more. But HaKodesh Baruch Hu made a miracle that all the donations will go into the building Beis HaMikdash. So Chalila, no one of Klal Yisrael will say, I came late. My donation won't be accepted. It won't be used in the Mishkan. 5 minutes late. Chaval, I didn't get up earlier. 5 minutes late. So Kodesh Baruch Hu says, makes a miracle, and everybody's donation went into the Mishkan.
Bonus round,
A bonus round in the campaign. How was the campaign, by the way? Successful? Baruch Hashem. You see from here, this happened back then, but we have a mitzvah. Walk in HaKodesh Baruch Hu's ways. Emulate Ribono Shel Olam. Somebody gave you something you already have. I already have this. Why'd you give me this? You raise money for something. That never happens. You raise money and you get extra. No, I don't need it. I don't know how, but that doesn't seem. Did you have that problem in the campaign, the recent campaign? I don't think so. You always do something else. But give people a good feeling. People should not go out and say, I came late. Why did I give him this? We have to learn from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, emulate him, walk in his path, walk in his ways, and make people feel great. That's the Or Chaim HaKodesh. Sam Sofer says a different answer. What did the Nisim bring? What did the Nisim bring? What was their donation? Avnei Shoyam. The people, the silver and the gold. This pasuk is talking about 2 different things. Dayam refers to the people. They brought silver and gold. It was exactly perfect. But it was still missing the Avnei Shoyam. And therefore, the Nesiim brought that. I think it's very meduyak what he says, because the pasuk repeats itself twice and says the melacha. Why do you have to say the word melacha twice? The melacha, because there is two different things. There was extra from the silver and gold that the people brought, but it was still a short that the Nesiim brought the Avnei Shom, and now we have Dayam, and now we have everything that the Mishkan needs.
The same thing with the Marot Tzavos. They get enough room for all of them. They cure.
Fine, but we don't have a pasuk that indicates in the same pasuk you have enough, you have extra. Here you have a built-in contradiction. How many? How many mitzvahs in Parshas Vayakhel? What's that? One. Would you like to share which one that is? Ese or lo taseh? Positive or negative commandment? Says Sefer HaChinuch, mitzvah Kuf, Yud, Dalet, the 114th mitzvah in the Sefer. We only have one mitzvah, Lo Yisaseh, in this Parsha, and that is that the Dayanim should not sit in trial on Shabbos. Shneimar, a pasuk from our Parsha. Lo tevaru esh bechol moshvoiseichem. Don't kindle a fire in all your dwellings. It's not just don't strike a match. It's also don't execute misas sreifa. And from sreifa we learn for the other capital punishments. So the 4 misas beis din, you don't do them on Shabbos. This is an instruction for the beis din. That's what the Gemara learns. That's what Sefer HaChinuch writes. Kuf Yud Dalet. What about the other things that the beis din punishes for? Can they sit in judgment on Shabbos? So the Magen Avraham and Orachaim Shin Lamed writes, he brings from the Rambam, you don't punish on Shabbos even though punishing in beis din is a positive commandment from the Torah. It's a mitzvah seseh. It does not override the Shabbos. So if a person gets misa or lashes, we don't give him lashes on Shabbos. Because the pasuk says in our Parsha, Lo tevaru esh vehu hadin lish'ar ha'onshin. And this is so to all the other punishments. In Minyan HaMitzvahs, when the Rambam counts all the mitzvahs, Shin Chav Beis, it's implied, says the Magen Avraham, that only something which entails a chilul Shabbos, there's a mitzvah d'oraisa not to do it on Shabbos. So he says, what about Malkos? What's the problem to give somebody Malkos on Shabbos? So maybe because you're going to cause a chabua, you're going to cause him to bleed, you're going to cause a wound on Shabbos, you're not allowed to, so maybe he says, tzarich iyun. And he says, maybe we learn it from the extra superfluous words, as if in the pasuk, bechol moshvoisechem, in all your dwellings, as if to suggest all the other different punishments, not just lo tevaru esh, not just the capital punishments. In Sanhedrin Lamed Hey, we learn that it's dafka something that entails chilul Shabbos, and that's what Tosfos over there says. And dinei mamonos you don't do because of a gezeira. Because maybe the beis din is going to start writing, and you're not allowed to write on Shabbos. So just because of a gezerah, you don't punish on Shabbos. After we made this very clear, beis din doesn't sit on Shabbos. They don't punish on Shabbos. And yet, the riddle of the week. When is it that beis din will sit on Shabbos? For Misa, not for Mamonos, it's only a gezerah. For Misa, on Shabbos, when did this happen? Does this ever happen? 5-point question. What about Irni Dachas? Why can't you wait for Sunday? What's your rush? Friday or Sunday? Not everybody together?
Avodah Zarah is the worst of...
It's the worst! Do it on Sunday.
An informer?
What's that?
An informer?
An informer is terrible! And why can't you wait till Sunday?
Maybe the one to be executed is about to die, so want to kill him.
Refuah Shlema. We don't do this on Shabbos. Achidish from a Tevas Goyme. Who's the Tevas Goyme? Pri Megadim has a sefer on the Torah called Tevas Goyme. He's not just a darshan. Pri Megadim is the greatest poisik. And Tevas Goyme is not just dushim. He brings a lot of halacha inside, and he says a remarkable chiddush. Parshas Pikudin Ois Aleph, he writes. What's that? Nope. Ben Soirer Umoire has a very short time that you can execute him as a Ben Soirer Umoire. How long is that time? 3 months. From the age of 13, till 13 and 3 months. It's a very short time. And what if 13 and 13 months are going to pass tomorrow? Tomorrow is Sunday. Uh-oh. We won't be able to do it. So you know what? We take him on Shabbos to Beis Din. The tremendous chiddush of the Pri Megadim. Sanhedrin Samiches, we learned it's only 3 months. What are we going to do? We're going to lose the amazing opportunity to bring him into Beis Din. So Beis Din says, so the Tevis Gomer says, the Pri Megadim says, bring him to Beis Din today on Shabbos. Execute him tomorrow. Which is a tremendous chiddush. The Rashba is a Rishon, Chelek Aleph, Siman Shin Yud Zayin, he writes, even though normally killing in Beis Din does not doiche Shabbos, it doesn't override Shabbos. However, we can command the Goyim to throw in a burning coal, whatever we need to do to execute the Misa of Seifa, and that a Goy can do for us on Shabbos, and you can execute on Shabbos, and that again, the tremendous chiddush. Since
is the din that they don't sit and ask in the Misa,
Yeah.
or that they don't execute?
both. Chiddush is, for this, since we don't have time, do it right now, on Shabbos. It's a tremendous chiddush.
Do you have to wait a day? They don't do the judgment and the killing the same day. You have to wait a day or two.
So he says, even though halana sadin, when you know the judgment, you know the verdict, execution, you don't do halana sadin, you don't wait until tomorrow. It's torturous for the person, but that is only derabanan. But killing him, halana sadin until tomorrow is only derabanan, and therefore he says we can't do it. But killing on Shabbos is an Isur Torah, so let's not kill him. We'll sit on Shabbos and we'll talk about it. We'll give the Psak Din execution. We'll wait till tomorrow, even though we don't like to do it normally because of the Rabbanon, but we're going to miss the opportunity to execute this guy. And therefore, let's do it rush. Let's sit right now on Shabbos and do the Beis Din.
On the judgment, do we judge because of the day of judgment or at the time of the crime? For example, if someone was born...
The day of judgment. We can only do this within those 3 months.
He escaped until after 3 months, then he's controlled.
No, if somebody killed, somebody stole, when we find him 2 years later, it's still fine. But here, the Gemara says, Sanhedrin Samiches, you only have a window of 3 months. Since we're in the area of Shabbos, let's expand and talk a little about Shabbos. Great chiddush from Yalkut Reuveni. He brings the name of a medrash. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sanctified the Shabbos. Vayekadesh oisoi. The fires of Gehenna don't work on Shabbos. They turn off all the fires on Shabbos. But it doesn't stop there. One who does Tosefes Shabbos, one who accepts on himself Shabbos early, they do the same for him, measure for measure. And if Khalila he has to go visit this very hot place, and most people do have to go for a short visit at least, they will turn off the fire on Friday corresponding to the time that he used to be mekabel on himself Tosefes Shabbos. Doesn't end there. Shem Oilam, Chofetz Chaim. He says not only from the time that you were mekabel on Yosef Tosefes Shabbos, from the time you got involved with the preparations for Shabbos, you're already in Shabbos mode. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do for you Shabbos mode, and they turn off the fires of Gehenna. And therefore he writes, Ve'al ken me'od tzarich lehishtadel ba'inyan hazeh. One should be very meticulous about this, be careful to put in the effort to do whatever is needed for Shabbos, to be involved, and that it removes a very hot judgment. Reb Steinman Zatzal and Reb Dov Lando Shlita both say, when you're learning Hilchos Shabbos, it's like a achana for Shabbos, and mimele, whenever you're learning, whether it's Monday in the morning, Tuesday afternoon, wherever it is, that's considered achana for Shabbos. What's the difference if I'm preparing the Cholent or I'm learning Hilchos Shabbos? In both, it's for the honor of Shabbos. At that time, fires of Gehenna rest. And that is a tremendous wish. I think it's kedai to rely on them for this purpose. Both Reb Steinman Zatzal and Reb Dov Lando Shlita. What can one expect to be rewarded with for Tosefes Shabbos? Again, comes the Pri Megadim. Pri Megadim is a heavy weight. And Reish Nun Vav, Seif Kotan Aleph in Orach Chaim, and he writes, Ha-moisif mechol ala kodesh, one who adds from the weekdays to the Kodesh, to Shabbos, Mosifin lo Chaim. You will get extra life. You add extra, you will get extra life. Gebaldik. If you find us a source, yes. If you find a source and bring it, we'll have to accept it. Im kabbalah nekabel, im ladin lichorei yesh tshuva. When we find a source, such as big chiddush, this is such a big chiddush, you need some kind of a source. Provide it, and we'll share it with others. Reb Chaim Kreisworth told the following Maaseh about Rabbi Sol Salanter. When Rabbi Sol Salanter was very old, he used to travel from place to place to try and give chizuk to Yidden in different places. He came to a city called Königsberg in Germany, and he became sick there. He told his host, look, if my condition deteriorates on Shabbos, you have no permission to violate Shabbos, to call Hatzalah, to call whoever you need, whatever you need to do Chilul Shabbos. There is no permission to do this for me. The person is startled. He said, and why not? So Rabbi Yisrael says, it's a halacha psuka. Yoredea, Simen Kuf Nun Ches, we learn that you don't help a shepherd of Behema Daka if he falls into a bow, into a pit. You don't help him come out. Because there's a chazaka. That Behema Daka, shepherds of this type of animals, are thieves. They let their animals that they're responsible for go and graze in other people's fields. They're gazlanim. And the Bir Halacha brings at the end of Simen Shin Chavtes that you don't violate Shabbos for gazlanim. And this person who's hosting it, says to him, so is the Rebbe saying he's a gazlan? What's the connection? He says, look, people think that I'm a Talmid Chochem. People think that I'm a tzaddik. They give me money. I know the truth. I'm not. So it comes out when I keep their money, and sometimes I do keep their money, because I don't want them to feel bad. So I take their money. But l'maaseh I'm a gazlan. The halacha is you're not allowed to violate Shabbos to save a gazlan. And therefore don't call Hatzalah, don't do anything. This guy didn't know what to do with himself. He sent a telegram to the Poisek Ado. Who's the Poisek generation? Rabbi Tzok Elchana of Kovna. He writes him back, of course you should be Chalel Shabbos for Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. He's a tzaddik Yisoid Oilam, and he's a Talmid Chochem, and he's the greatest tzaddik. He's just the most humble person you ever met, and that's why he's saying what he's saying. But of course, you should violate Shabbos to save Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was very careful with OPM, other people's money. You see, on one hand, he was very careful with Shabbos, but he was very careful with other people's money. How careful? Reb Isaac Sher, Yeshiva of Slobodka, said that he was once in a city in Germany, and he gave a drasha on Shabbos. His fellow comes to him at the end, and he says, you know, you remind me of the drasha Rabbi Yisrael Salanter gave in this place. Mamish, it's the same type of a drasha. He says, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was here, he didn't live here. When was he here giving a drasha? So I said, I'll tell you. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was here visiting, and he got a letter from his daughter that she's getting married, and she's requesting his presence. He should come, her father. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter writes her back, and he says, my dear daughter, I would love to be in your wedding. I don't have the money. And I can't go and borrow money when I have no idea where I'm going to have the money to pay back. So Mitzvah Hashem, when I have the money a little later, I will come visit you, but I'm not so sure that I'll be able to make it for the wedding. And in fact, he didn't make it for the wedding. Later on, he got some money and he came to visit her. So when he was visiting the city, he gave a drasha back then. You see here how careful he was with other people's money. You can't borrow if you don't know where you're going to pay back from. On the other hand, he felt that he's a gazlan because maybe he took money that people view him as a tzaddik. Today, is there any person who will not borrow some money to go to... It's a mitzvah! I have to! People borrow money and they spend on furniture and all kinds of things and traveling and vacation. Oh, we'll figure it out. Oh, Kodesh Baruch Hu for sure is going to help. Oh, I'll find a way to pay back. Who told you? There's a pasuk in Tehillim. Lo yive rasha v'lo yeshalem. Tiferes Yisrael asks, this pasuk is formulated in a wrong order. Why are you saying lo yive rasha? You should say lo yive v'lo yeshalem, a borrower that doesn't pay, he gets the title rasha. But David HaMelech calls him a rasha from the get-go. Lo yive rasha, a wicked borrower v'lo yeshalem. Why are you giving him such titles before he decided to pay or not? Says that Tiferes Yisrael, this is speaking about a very specific borrower. One that borrows and has no idea, no plan how to pay back. He, from the time that he takes the money, is called a rasha. Lo yive rasha because he has no idea and he doesn't have any plans how to be meshalem, v'lo yeshalem, and therefore he is called a rasha. How careful we have to be with other people's money.
The way it's minhag is the way Israeli minhag, you borrow from Gemara.
then you rely on the fact you can borrow from another Gemach, pay back the first Gemach you borrowed from.
If you have a plan how to ultimately pay the Gemach, what's the difference if it's Gemach A or Gemach B or Gemach C, but you have a plan how to pay them? But many times that doesn't happen. And you borrow from an individual or from a Gemach without any idea how you're going to pay. That is a terrible thing. So Reb Chaim Kazis, based on this Maaseh, says, now I can understand a Gemara in Yuma Lamed Hamud Beis. The Gemara says that Hillel was very, very poor, and he didn't have whatever it took, $1 or $50 to go into the Beis Medrash and to learn and to hear Divrei Torah. It was the month of Teves, very cold, middle of the winter, and he wanted to hear Divrei Elokim Chaim. He wanted to hear Shmaya and Avtalion. So he went on the roof, famous Maaseh. It was very cold, it was Friday, and he's listening to Divrei Torah, and snow started coming down, so much so that in the morning, Shmaya and Avtalion come into the shul and say, what's going on here? It's kind of dark in the shul. They go, oh, person is there on the window. And they went up on the roof, and they took him, and they said, Ra'ui huzeh lechalel es haShabbos. This is the person who's worthy to be mechalel Shabbos for. What does it mean? Is there a yid that you shouldn't be mechalel Shabbos for? Ra'ui huzeh, Hillel is a person who's worthy for us to be mechalel Shabbos. Hillel is not a tzaddik, and even if it's not, is there any yid that you shouldn't be mechalel Shabbos? Says Reb Chaim Kazis, this is the answer. A person who's a gazlan, you should not violate Shabbos to save. By the fact that Hillel was willing to go on the roof, not to borrow the $50 to go in because he had no idea where he's going to be able to pay from, you see that Hillel is not a gazlan, mimele, he is ra'ui. He is the one who is fitting for us to violate Shabbos for. The Gemara says in Shabbos Kuf Yutes Amud Beis, when a person comes back tonight, Friday night from shul, he is escorted by 2 malachim. 2 angels come with him home. And they see if the candles are lit, the table is set, the beds are made. So there's a good angel and the opposite angel. And the good angel says, Yehi Rotzon, may it be thy will, that this exactly will happen again next week, and you'll have a beautiful Shabbos again next week. And the bad angel is forced to say Amen. And if Khalila, it's the reverse. So the bad angel says, Yehi Ratzon, that this should be like this for the next week, and the good angel is forced to say Amen. I think maybe perhaps, these 3 things that they're looking for in a person's home allude to the atmosphere that we have to have on Shabbos. It's not specifically the bed. It's not specifically the table or the candles. They allude to something much higher than that. What does it mean if the candle is lit? The Pasuk says in Mishlei Chaf, Pasuk Zayin, Chaf Zayin, Nishmas Ner Hashem, Nishmas Adam. The candle always alludes to our neshama. Is the candle lit? Is there excitement? Are you enthusiastic about Shabbos and what it means? They come into the house and they want to see a fire of Yiddishkeit, a fire of excitement about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean? Shulchan Aruch, the table is set, that all the affairs in this house are conducted based on the Shulchan Aruch. That's the language of the Gemara. Is the Shulchan Aruch? Do you do everything here? Kol kavanosea, dikdukeya, prateya, ve'ilchusea, based on the Shulchan Aruch? What does that mean? Mitosoi mutzaat. The bed is made. The bed should look as if you're not planning to use it. Why? The Yerushalmi in Masechet Shabbos Perek Tesvav Halacha Gimel. Lo nitnu Shabbasos v'yamim tovim liYisrael ela kedei sheyasku b'hem b'Torah. Why did the Kodesh Baruch Hu give us a Shabbos and a Yom Tov? To sit and to learn. So if your bed looks as if you're going to hop in a second, that means you didn't chap what Shabbos is all about. Yes, one is allowed to sleep on Shabbos. And the acronym of Shabbos, Shein Beis Taf, is Sheina B'Shabbos Tanug. I know. But it could be that Sheina B'Shabbos Tanug, that 1 hour in the bed equals 2 hours on a weekday. But there's an extra special merit of learning Torah on Shabbos. In Avos, Perek Vav, Mishnah Hey, 48 acquisitions of Torah, we learn that miut Sheina, sleeping less, minimizing time you rest in bed, is one of the acquisitions of Torah. Rambam writes, Hilchos Talmud Torah Perek Gimel Halacha Yud Gimel. Even though it's a mitzvah to learn, bayom uvalayla, during the day and at night, en adam lamed rov chochmasoi, ela balayla. One acquires most of his wisdom at night. And therefore the Rambam says, one who wants to acquire the crown of Torah should make sure not to waste even one of his nights on eating, drinking, sleeping. He should sit and learn Torah. V'chol haloimed Torah balayla, HaKadosh Baruch Hu draws on him chut shel chesed nimshach alav bayom. The Ben Ish Chai, Shana Beis Shemois, writes, learning Torah on Shabbos, Pi Elef is 1,000 times greater than learning Torah during the weekdays. So that's what it means. Mitasoy mutzaz. The bed is made as if I'm not planning to use it. It looks nice, but I'm not planning to use it. I'm planning to sit and learn. It doesn't stop there. Look what you can get for learning on Shabbos. Chofetz Chaim makes a calculation. Reb Elia Lupian once visited the Chofetz Chaim on Shabbos, and in Lev Eliyahu, he brings that the Chofetz Chaim told him the following. Mishnah and Peah, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph, we say it every single day. Talmud Torah, keneged kulam. The Gaon Mivilna over there in his Perush Shnos Eliyahu on Maseches Peah writes that every word you say when you're learning Torah is considered independent mitzvah. It's not that you have to understand the whole sugya. Oh, you have the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Every single way. The Amar is a mitzvah. Abaye is another mitzvah. Every single word is a mitzvah. If that's the case, Talmud Torah corresponds as all the weight corresponding to all the mitzvahs. When you say Amar, learning Torah, you actually have 613 mitzvahs now. Each one is a mitzvah, and each mitzvah of Talmud Torah corresponds as the weight of 613 mitzvahs. So Amar weighs 613 mitzvahs. Doesn't end there. The Gaon writes, since we find in Chazal, in Brachos, Yerushalmi, Perek Aleph Halacha Hey, that Shabbos corresponds to all the mitzvahs. When you fulfill a mitzvah on Shabbos, any mitzvah on Shabbos, it has the weight of 613 mitzvahs. So if you're learning Torah on Shabbos, you have to multiply 613 by 613. Each mitzvah of Torah, which is every word, it weighs 613 mitzvahs. Mitzvah performed on Shabbos weighs 613 mitzvahs. So what happens when they clash, when they combine? 613 times 613 is 375,769 mitzvahs. That's where the word Amal. Then comes the word Abaye. Then comes the word whatever he says. Every word in Torah has 769 mitzvahs. It doesn't end there. Chofetz Chaim made a calculation once that one can say 200 words in a minute. So if you're thinking, what can I gain from learning Torah? I only have 1 minute. Only have 1 minute. So you got to take the number we just found, 375, 769, and times it by 200. You know what that means? 75,183,800 mitzvahs. That's for only 1 minute. But who's going to learn only 1 minute? After hearing this, you got to be crazy. So let's say you only learn for an hour, only 60 minutes. So you multiply this by 60. And that's only 4,509,228,000 mitzvahs that you get for 1 hour. If you think it stops there, that's where the Chofetz Chaim stops. I'm continuing. Bartenua, in Avos, Perek Dalet, Mishnah Beis writes, if you have enjoyment when you do a mitzvah, you get 2. You get sachar for the mitzvah, you just did a mitzvah. And you also get sachar for the ta'anug that you have. So that means whatever we just found now, those 4 billion, you have to double. Who's not going to enjoy learning on Shabbos? So we're up to 9 billion. Avos de Rab Nosson, Perek Gimel Halacha Vav. Tov lo le'adam, echad betza'ar, mimea berevach. So somebody who finds it difficult, he still has pleasure because he wants to double up his reward. But whatever reason, it's too hot, it's too cold, there's noise, whatever it is. Tov echad betzar, mimea berevach. That means you have to multiply it by 100 if it's a little difficult for you. You do the math. Yerushalmi, Brachos, Perek Tes Halacha Hey. Im ra'ita et habrios nishyasu yedeyen min haTorah. You see, the people are giving up on Torah. They're not learning. Amod vehischazek ba ve'ata mekabel schar kulam. So Yerushalmi in Brachos, Perek Tes Halacha Hey. There are times that are a little weaker in learning Torah. Friday afternoon. How many people are sitting and learning? Motzei Shabbos. Purim night. Who's sitting and learning then? Motzei Yom Kippur, everybody's involved in other mitzvahs. I'm buying my 4 minim, I'm building my sukkah. If you see certain times, late, tonight, Friday night, Shabbos, who's sitting and learning? Get up really early tomorrow morning when people get up late. If you learn at that time, you get reward corresponding to all those people who didn't do what you did. You do the math. I don't even know how to start counting because we're talking about a lot of people. Sdei Chemen, Ma'areches Mem, Klal Kuf Tzadiches writes, one who learns bechavrusa or with a chabura, the more people, the merrier, gets reward corresponding to all the people who participate with him. So if it's 2 people, double up. If it's 3 or 4 or 5, time the amount of people that are sitting and learning with you. Doesn't end there. Kedushas Yontov, the Ma'arit Al-Ghazi, page Pei Beis writes, if it's a result of your learning, you cause others to learn, you encourage them, you motivate them, people see you and they're inspired and they do the same, you get reward corresponding to their learning as well. So again, if you do it, not betzina, either you can do it betzina, but publicize to others, or do it in the shul. Mimele, you have to double the reward by the amount of people that you inspired to do the same. I think based on all this, we can understand what the Pasuk says. Pasuk in Mishle, Perik Beis, Psukim Daled, and Psukim Hey. Pasuk Hey. Im tevakshena chakasef. Uchematmonim techapsena. If you look for the Torah, like you search for silver and gold, az tavin yiras Hashem vedas Eloikim timtza, because you really have to seek, as if you're searching for gold, for silver. The pasuk in Mishlei Perek Gimel, pasuk says Tetvav, Yekara hi mipninim, b'chol chafatzecha lo yishvu ba. It's more precious than pearls, than precious stones, than gold, than silver. Nothing comes close to the value of Torah. Now we see why. We're talking about billions and trillions. I don't even know if we can, I don't even know how to pronounce those numbers. It's too many zeros. I don't know how to pronounce, but I'm going to leave a Kodesh Baruch Hu to do the accounting. But you see the reward, and maybe that's why the Malachim come and they try to see if the bed is made. In other words, is this guy planning to learn on Shabbos or to waste in time and sleeping extra?
One famous Rebbe, I forget the name, who never went to sleep on Shabbos because he held Shemir of Shabbos. You can't Shomer the Shabbos if you're sleeping.
Right.
You know, I recall who that was, I forget.
I don't, but I recall the story. But maybe also Shulchan Aruch, that the Malach sees, if the Shulchan is set, maybe also alludes to the fact that one has to learn. Hilchos Shabbos, the Chafetz Chaim in his Akdama to Chele Gimel brings some Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz that if somebody doesn't learn and reviews, learns and reviews Hilchos Shabbos, inevitably he's going to transgress because there's so many Hilchos Shabbos and they're so complex. So if someone doesn't constantly learn and relearns it, he's going to make a mistake. And therefore, the Malachim come and they want to see, is this person a person who learns Hilchos Shabbos? Because that's the only way to do it. I don't know if I already said this once here, but if I did, I'm not asking you to forgive me that I'm repeating myself. I'm telling you it's a mitzvah to do chazara on this gewaldige amaisa that I'm about to tell you. And if I never said this story before, so you have a chance to hear a moyedek amaisa. I was unbelievably moved when I heard it the first time. And the truth is, I moved every single time I shared it with others. There was an Israeli who moved to New York. Very, very secular. Very secular. And he lives there for many years. His daughter is even more secular than him, if that's possible. And then she got engaged to somebody who was not from our family. This guy was besides himself. He didn't know what to do. He doesn't keep Shabbos, doesn't do anything. But my daughter should marry out. But what can he do? She's 24. You can't tell her what to do. He didn't know what to do, and he was talking to all his friends. He was so upset. One of his friends told him, there's a very old rabbi in Bnei Brak. Maybe you should go talk to him. He says, I should go to the rabbis? How is that going to help? I don't go to the rabbis. He says, what do you have to lose? You tried everything else. He says, okay, who's this guy? He says, Reb Steinman. This guy flew to Eretz Yisrael. He went to Bnei Brak. And he goes in trepidation, trembling that maybe the rabbi is going to tell him he's going to have to grow his payas like a Breslov. He's going to have to put a tzitzit like a Chazon Ish maybe, who knows? But he decided whatever he says, I'm going to do. He says to him, Rabbi, Look, my daughter is she's engaged now. Somebody who's not Jewish. What do I do? Shlomo says to him, do you daven? No. Eat kosher? No, Rabbi, I'm not. You keep Shabbos? No, I don't do these things. But I'm willing to do whatever you'll tell me. As an aside, it's not a big surprise. He doesn't listen to his father, so his daughter doesn't listen to her father. It's pashut. So Shlomo says to him, I want you every Friday night to say, Vayakhulu hashamayim veha'aretz, to Kiddush Friday night, and learn 2 Hilchos Shabbos on your Shabbos table. He says, fine, but what do I do to get rid of this guy? What should I do? He says, I just told you. I want you to say Friday night Kiddush, say Vayakhulu hashamayim ve'aretz, and I want you to learn 2 Hilchos Shabbos on your Shabbos table. He says, Rabbi, I'll do it, but what do you want me to do? What should I do? I just told you. He said, okay, sounds kind of strange. He turns around, he goes back to New York. First Shabbos, he does exactly what Reb Shlomo said. He says, Vayakhulu, he says 2 halachos on his Shabbos table. Following Shabbos, he does the same. Sunday, that's a week and a half after he came to visit Reb Shlomo. Sunday, this guy who's engaged to his daughter is on his motorcycle in Manhattan, in the city, and some of the roads there are not so great. And he falls, and a truck goes and runs right over him. And I don't want to say Zichrono Livracha. I don't know where he is now. This guy can't believe it. Mamish, an open miracle. Mamish, amazing. So he buys a ticket to go back to Bnei Brak to say thank you to Reb Shlomo. And he runs inside and he says, Rebbe, Yasher Koyach, how'd you do it? How'd you kill him so fast? Reb Shlomo says, I didn't kill anyone. What are you talking about? Rabbi, it took you a week and a half. How'd you get rid of him? How'd you kill him? He says, I didn't kill anyone. Can you explain to me what happened here? So Reb Shlomo says, it's very simple. The Gemara says in Shabbos Kuf Yutes, Kol ha'omer vayechulu. If you say Vayakhulu hashamayim ve'aretz on Friday night, you become a partner to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Maaseh Bereshis. A partner to Ribono Shel Olam. So I figured, if you have a partner who's honest, who is hagun, and you ask your partner to do something for you, and he can, a good person would do that. So I figured if you become a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you request something from him, and if he can, and he can, he will, you become a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's how we should treat. Tonight, you have an opportunity. We have an opportunity every single day, all day long. But tonight, the Gemara says, Kol ha'omer vayechulu, b'leil Shabbos, na'asa shutaf l'HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'maaseh bereshis.
He kept nothing. So how come, and he was anti, how come it affected him when his daughter was marrying out?
How come? There's nothing more natural than that.
No, but he was anti everything, anti keeping Torah mitzvah.
Right.
So how come it affected him? Why partly,
There's a famous expression in English. There are no atheists in a foxhole. When all else fails, people look up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The truth is, I know you are the ones who is conducting the affairs, not me. You control the world, it's your world. But people live in denial. And every year there's a spark. So it ignited that spark. It became a shoot of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If it was so anti, he could have said, I don't want to pray, I don't want to play this game. Why did he go to the rabbi? Because ultimately there are no atheists in a foxhole. Aboisai Dayani Mumchim. Listen to a maaseh that happened in the city of Elad. There's a family that's getting ready for a Shabbos Sheva Bochis. They took from a pot gemach, a gigantic pot, to be able to make Cholent for everybody's going to come. There's going to be a lot of guests over Shabbos Sheva Bochos, and they made a beautiful pot of Cholent. A few minutes before Shabbos, they took this boiling Cholent pot, and they're carrying it to bring it to the plata, to put it on the hot plate. Suddenly, a very tiny Frum fly comes and wants to do the mitzvah of To'ameh. There's a mitzvah to taste some of the Shabbos foods before Erev Shabbos. Aruch HaShulchan brings it. Siman Reish Nun, Seif Koden Dalet, Seif Dalet, Aruch HaShulchan brings, it's a mitzvah Nachon litom be'erev Shabbos, it's the right thing to taste on Erev Shabbos all the tavshilim of Shabbos. To ameha chayim zachu. The source to say this is Machzor Viti. Machzor Viti is the Talmid of Rashi. And he brings that one who practices this mitzvah will get longevity. The source is from Tfilas Musaf. We say, To ameha, one who tastes the Shabbos foods, chayim zachu, will merit life. So I guess this fly wanted to, partake in the great mitzvah. He obviously wasn't so careful. Or for whatever reason, he had a sack full of averos, I don't know what. But what happened is, he drowned into the cholent, and because of its color, because of its size, can't identify. And now he's down into the cholent, and they try to take a little to try to... Impossible. He's there. Comes now the family and asks, did we lose the cholent? It's a big cholent pot. And we have covered Shabbos, we have covered the guests, we have covered Sheva Brachos. Can we rely on nullifying 60, nullifying in... this pot has 1,000 times, or more than that, 5,000 times at least, the size of this tiny little fly. What do we do with the cholent? Rabbi Isai, let's try to help the family. You don't want to help them?
It's a bria.
It's a birya.
It melts.
It melts.
There's also Hefsed Merubah here.
Big time Hefsed Merubah, big time Sh'as Adchak, big time B'di'evets, all the B'di'evets that I counted before. You have Kavod Ha'ochim, guests, a lot of guests are coming. Kavod the Shabbos, Kavod Chassan and Kala. Rabbi Isai, do we want to help them or not? Is there a way to help them? You want to help them? Please share the details. How are we going to do that? Oh, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm asking the rabbi. That's why I came.
You blend the cholent.
Blend it. And mevatlin isur lechatchila you don't care about. And mevatlin isur lechatchila. It's true that once you have a mixture, and it will be nullified because you have 60 times its size, it's nullified. But you can't take something which you're not allowed to nullify and say, you know what? I actually love chazir in my cholent. I happen to like it. I think it's delicious. So I take little pieces of cholent, of chazir, and I throw into my cholent. Its little piece is nullifying the majority. With time, you have a whole chazir with a little kosher meat. Ein mevatlin isur lechatchila. Can't do that. If it happened, then we say, okay, fine, but not lechatchila. Lechatchila, right now, you have something which is an isur. If you go now and smash it into pieces and say, oh, it's smashed, it's nullifying the majority. You transgressed, and mevatlin isur lechatchila. We only say it b'di'evet after the fact. When you know that it happened, you can say, oh, it's not a full entity, it's nullifying the majority. But I want to try and save this family. Can you imagine the embarrassment? Is there a way to do it?
Isn't it in if you serve it, like each time you're taking one portion out, then you can be, there's a very small suffix, each portion in itself, you can say it's okay.
Brilliant. Let's see.
Called the Parish Merubah Parish?
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
But it's kavua. It's called kavua. It's kavua.
He's saying something else. He's saying to avoid that problem. Soon we'll see. I'm sorry?
Like what he said, it's not
Let's see.
the three pieces of
But before that, let's go to the basic halacha. Really, things normally are nullified in the majority. If there's 60 times its size, certain things 100, certain things 200. But we have a technical problem. Birya afilu be'elef loy batil. A full entity, even though the size is of an ant, tiny, it's much less than a kazait, does not nullify in the majority. This we learn in Toysres in Zvachim Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. The Chochmas Adam clarifies it in Klal Nun Gimel, Seifim Beis and Gimel. And the Shulchan Aruch paskins this lahalacha in Yoredei Simen Kuf Seif Aleph. But there are 4 conditions to be met in order to say that this entity, this birya, does not nullify in the majority. And if one of these conditions are not present, this birya will nullify in the majority. So let's try to help this family. There's 4 different conditions that have to be met. The first one is yesh bo chiyus, or had chiyus. This thing had chiyus once. The fly used to fly. It had life in it, as opposed to wheat of kil'aim. It's chitas isu, but it never had chiyus. That will be nullified in the majority. So this will not help us, because this fly had chiyus from the get-go. It doesn't have now, but it did have in the past. So it does qualify birya, which does not nullify in the majority. We're out, strike one, we're out. Fine. Let's try for the second one.
Not enough?
This condition does not help us.
No, it doesn't matter.
This condition means, yes, you are a birya which does not nullify in the majority because you had life in you. If you never had a life in you, even though you're an entity, you are nullified. So the wheat of kilayim will be nullified because it never had life. This did have life, so it will not be nullified even times 1,000 of its size. Second condition. Isuroi mitchilas briyasoi. Its isur is from the get-go, from its inception, as opposed to of tahor that became a nevela. Shor haniskal. This shor, before it gored and got a capital punishment, skila, was permissible, it's kosher. But now something happened and it became asu. That will nullify the majority. But this, that was asu from the beginning, a fly is never kosher, it's not going to help us. It is a birya, and therefore it does not nullify even if it's 1,000 times its size. Third condition. Im yechalek ein shemoy alav. If you cut it in half, you take a little piece and you say, oh, it lost its name, so then it does not nullify. As opposed to chelev. Chelev, when you cut it in two, do you say, oh, this is a part of chelev? Or you say, oh, this is chelev. You say, this is chelev. So chelev will be nullifying the majority. But when you take a piece of gidanashe, ever minachai, a fly, you cut it in two, you don't say, oh, here is a fly. You say, here is a piece of a fly. Here is a part of a fly. That qualifies to be birya, that ifilu be'elef loy batil, and therefore we can't help him with these first three conditions. Fourth condition. Lo chaser mimeno klum. Nothing is missing. The entire fly, as we saw, went down, drowning in the cholent. If nothing is missing, he is a full entity. If it's a full entity, afilu be'elef lo batil, it doesn't nullify even in 1,000. We have a problem. Shaul Teshuv is Chavos Yair. Who's Chavos Yair? Rabbi Yair Bachach, about 450 years ago. In Simin Kuf Hey, he tells us a story. He says in Tes Vav Av, Tu Be'av, 15th of Av, I was sitting with a group of Lomdei Mishnayos. They're probably celebrating a Siyum. And they served us a stew with meat and with rice. It sounds very much like our cholent. And suddenly a fly came and landed inside. I don't know if it was Erev Shabbos. He was from the same family, wanted to do Torah Mea Chaim Zachu. I don't know why. He decided it's tasty. He wants to do Shirai Mavacheler Mitzvah. I don't know. Same Maiseh. And the Chavos Yair instructed all of them, don't eat it. And he says, people started making fun of me. And especially this old Talmid Chochem, who started making fun of me, says, what are you talking about? It's nullified, there's more than 1,000 times its size. What's the problem? And I said to him, what do you mean? It's a birya. It's a full entity. Afilu be'elef lo batil, it doesn't nullify. He says to him, no. The reason an entity doesn't nullify is because it has chashivus. It's a full entity. But this fly doesn't have chashivus. So he says, the Chavos Yair, I told him, what about a Mishnah in Maseches Makos, Daf Yud Gimel? An ant does not nullify. What chashivus does an ant have? So this guy responded and he says, what are you talking about? An ant has chashivus. Shlomo Melech praised the ant in Mishlei Perek Vav, Pasuk Vav. Lech el nemala atzel re'ed dracheha v'chacham. Go to the ant, you lazy one, see its ways, and you will become wise. It means Shlomo Melech praised the ant, that means it has chashivus. But other things, like this fly, says this Talmid Chochem to the Chavos Yair, will be nullified. Says the Chavos Yair, I decided I'm going to practice another pasuk in Mishlei, Perek Chavav, pasuk Daled. Al ta'an ksil keivalsoi, pen tishve lo gamata. Don't answer a fool, lest you become a fool like him. So I decided I'm going to keep quiet. I went back home, and then I said to myself, but maybe he's right. He's older than me. He is a Talmid Chochem. Maybe he's right. I started looking. And even though there is a mashmaus that the birya does not nullify because of its chashivus, and that's Rashi and Shavuos Chaf Aleph Amud Beis. But Lemaise, the Toysis and Zvachim Ayin Beis right, that it's Xeras HaKasuv. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that birya, it doesn't make a difference. Its size, bigger than a kazait, smaller than a kazait, does not nullify. And Lemaise, the Shulchan Aruch decrees, Yoredei Simen Kuf Seif Aleph, that a birya does not nullify. So he said to himself, Yashikoyach to me, I was right and he was wrong. So Lemaisa, we tried helping this family with 4 ways. We weren't successful. Let's try a little harder. 3 more possible ways we can explore to try and help them. The opinion of the Rash and the Ozarua, Rash and Ozarua Rishonim, that an entity does nullify in 960 times its size. The two brings this opinion, and it's based on a Yerushalmi and Maseches Tumas Perek Yud Aleph. The second way potentially we can help them. The Rema says in Siman Kuf Gimel in Yoredea that a birya srucha, disgusting, rotten birya, an entity, does nullify. And the third thing, maybe, what you said before, maybe by being in the Cholent pot, being cooked there, it dissolved. It lost some of its parts. It no longer is a birya. And if it's no longer a birya, it will be nullified. Let's explore each one of these 3. The first one we said is the opinion of the Rash and the Ozarua, Rishonim. Rash, Reb Shimshon Mishans, one of the Chashuv Balei HaTosfos, 12th century. He is the author of Tosfos Shans. He is the main commentary on Peres HaMishnayos, at least in Seder Zraim and Seder Taharos. You can't move in Zraim without the Rash. And the Rash brings from Tumas Perek Yud Aleph that there is opinion that a birya is nullified in 960 times its size. And 960 is a very special number. It's not out of nowhere. Maaseh Vakeach and the Rambam brings, the Gemara twice tells us in Kiddushin Nun Beis and in Sukkah Nun Beis and Kiddushin Lamed Amud Beis, Im paga becha menuval zeh, moshcheu lebeis hamedesh. If the Yetzer Hara comes and attacks you, you pull him to Beis Hamedesh. Why Beis Hamedesh? Beis Hamedesh, numerical value 961. Aha! If you want to take this birya, this entity, this wicked entity, this Yetzer Hara, and nullify it, because there's an opinion that a birya does nullify 960, pull him to Beis Hamedesh. Over there, you will be able to get rid of him. Not only will you be able to get rid of him, you will transform. You will be able to nullify yourself to Torah shebichsav, to Torah shebe'al peh, which is present in Beis Hamedesh, to the Talmidei Chachamim, who are present in the Talmidei Chachamim. 960 is a special number. How special is it? Bnei Yissaschar and Megale Amukos both say a remarkable thing. When one jumps into the mikveh, he comes very, very tameh, very impure, very unclean. He dives in, he comes out, boop, he is taho. How does that happen? How much water is in a kosher mikveh? 40 seah. How many kabin in each seah? 6. How many lugim in each kav? 4. So in each seah, 4 times 6, there's 24 lugim in each seah. You said there's 40 seah. 20 times 40, 960 parts of water purifies a human. Now we can understand, say the Bnei Yissaschar and Megale Amukos, the last Mishnah, Maseches Yuma, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ashreichem Yisrael, praiseworthy are you, Klal Yisrael. Mikveh Hashem Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is your mikveh. Ma mikveh metayeres atmeim, Af HaKadosh Baruch Hu metayeres Yisrael, just like the mikveh. Pures, those who are impure, so to HaKadosh Baruch Hu pures Klal Yisrael, and everybody asks, what's the connection? Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu a body of water? Is he a well? Is he an ocean? Is he a pool? What is he? Why are you comparing it to a mikveh? Says the Bnei Yissaschar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, if you come to my mikveh, that's the 40 days of tshuva. Jump into my mikveh, Rosh Chodesh Elul. Until Yom Kippur, that's 40 days of tshuva. Each one is made out of 24 hours. 24 times 40 is 960 parts of tshuva. If you come into my mikveh, you will come out pure, just like you go into that body of water made out of 960 parts of water. The Pnei David the Chidah says, Masnisin, Mishnah, Gematria, 960. That's why he says Moshe Rabbeinu was 40 days and 40 nights up there to learn Torah shebe'al peh, which is the ikar of it is the Mishnah, Masnisin, and that's how you nullify yourself. And Panim Chadashos Ba'u Lekan, when you nullify yourself to Divrei Torah, to Divrei Chachamim, to Torah shebichtav, to Torah shebe'al peh. Ki teitze, we learn about the mamzer, and the pasuk says, Lo yavo mamzer b'kal Hashem. A mamzer cannot come into our midst. Even Gam Doasi, 10th generation. What about the 11th generation? Can he come? Adoinam, forever. So why'd you have to say 10? Isn't 10 within 100? If you say forever, and that's the halacha, Why did you have to say, even the 10th generation? Here, look, I'm giving you $100. There's even $10 inside. Shkoyach. Says Yosef Rebbe. You would have thought, perhaps, that after the Ostrovtzer Rebbe, you would have thought that perhaps after 10 generations he would be nullified because of this opinion of 960. Why? A mamzer marries a kosher woman. His son is only half a mamzer. He comes from him, and he comes from his kosher wife. So only half a mamzer. What happens in the second generation? He's going to marry and he's going to have a kid. How much mamzerus is left in this kid? Quarter. Only 1/4. This third generation? Only 1/8. The fourth generation? 1/16. The fifth generation? 132. And the sixth generation? 164. The seventh generation? 128. The eighth generation? 256. The ninth generation? 512. And the 10th generation? 1024. Oh, that's more than 960. And according to the opinion that he is nullified 960, you would think, well, after 10 generations, there's no more mamzerus here. Comes the Torah and says, guess what? Even after 10 generations, he is not nullified forever. So we see 960 is a big number. So maybe this can help us. The answer is no, because lemaise, even though it's brought in the Tur, and it's the opinion of some of the Rishonim, the Shulchan Aruch, Paskins lemaise yoredea simen kuf seif aleph, birya afilu be'elef lo batil. A full entity, a birya, is not nullified even times 1,000 its size. So that's not going to help us. The second thing we tried, what about sahuach, something which is disgusting, and we all agree this fly is disgusting. That does nullify, but Gedolei HaPoskim, the Pani Meirus in his tshuva to the Chavos Yair in a different place, Chelik Beis Simin Samech Zayin, the Pri Chadash, the Beis Meir, they all explain that the Terema says in Kuf Gimel that the Birya Srucha is nullified. That we're talking about an Of Tameh who was fine, and then something happened, rotten. But something which was disgusting from the beginning, like our fly, is the regular birya that is not nullified even 1,000 times its size. That didn't help us. We go to the seventh possibility, and that is maybe by cooking the fly, he's in the cholent, he's being cooked. He is no longer a full birya. He's not longer a full entity. He is dissolved. Parts of it are he's not there. That also doesn't work for us. Why? Because Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Pei Daled Seif Tes that even after bishul, after cooking, we do not rely on this opinion when we know for a fact that a full entity came inside. We only can rely on it when we have a suffix. If you have a doubt whether it was a full entity or not, you can rely on it. That's how we're makel. That's what the Shach says over there in Siman Pei Daled Seif Koten Chavtes. But if you don't have a suffix, and we don't have a suffix, we saw it flying in, the entire cholent is asur. But we have possibly one more way, the eighth way. And that is the way that you wanted to help them. It's a revolutionary type of a... Together. And somebody wanted to help them. Rav Nissim wanted to help. We must try to use koyach dehetera. If we can. We have called the parish miruba parish. We'll explain how that works. And this is to allow sh'asad chak gadol hefsed merube, cover the guests, cover the Shabbos, cover the Chasen and Kala, cover the Shabachos, and any other cover that you want to include. So we have to stretch our imagination. How do we do that? What do you do with the cholent pot? You take it from the hot plate and you put it on the main table. Here, take. Chas v'sholom. The waiters are going to pour it into serving bowls in the kitchen, and then they're going to take, let's say, 10 serving bowls and put it on each table. You must say that 9 out of those serving bowls are fine. The fly can't be in more than one place. And if he is, that's great for us because he's not a birya anymore. So he is a full birya and he is in one of them. Now we have to introduce the concept called the parish, miruba parish. When you come from a majority, you're like the majority. So on each bowl, I have to say, not on 9 out of 10, on 10 out of 10, I should say, you came from the majority which are kosher, you are kosher like them. And lichoira, I can eat the entire 10 bowls, unless you'll tell me put one aside. Maybe we'll talk about it. But lichoira, I should be able to eat all the 10 bowls, or at least 9 of them. Can this work? The answer is no. Unfortunately, because in Zvachim and Gimel Amud Aleph we learn that if you have a behemoth isu, let's say a shor aniska, that got combined with other behemoths, so you know what? Why don't we wait a few minutes? They're going to start walking. They're going to spread. And we'll take each one and say, oh, you came from the majority. You're kosher like the majority. This behemoth got mixed with 1,000 behemoths. We don't say that. It's a gzeira of Chazal. Shema yikach min hakavua. Because if we'll say that, maybe you're not going to have so much patience. And you're going to go to the behemoth when it's still in its place and take it. And we have a rule, Ksubis Tesvav Amud Aleph and many other places in Chazal. Kol kavua kemechza al mechza dami. Even though we have a rule that we go after the majority, we do not go after the majority when it's set in its place. What do I mean? When the minority is set in its place. The halacha is that if you have 9 stores selling kosher meat in this town, and 1 store only that sells non-kosher, if you found a piece of meat in the street, what are we going to say? Kosher! Because we go after the majority. The majority of meat in this city are kosher. But if you come back home and you say to your wife, I got you some meat for Shabbos. She says, where'd you get it from? From the store. Yeah, I know. Which store? I went there in the shopping center. Which store? Can't remember. Even though there are 9 stores that sell kosher meat in this town and only 1 not kosher, we say, you have a problem. Because when you came to the meat which was set in its place, that's called kavua. V'chol kavua kemechza al mechza dami. It moves up from 10%, it moves up to becoming 50%. Kavua is like half and half. Mimele, because of a gzeira of Chazal, even though it's separated from the majority, you're stuck and you can't use it, you can't take this meat. We tried hard. We tried in 8 different ways to help this family, and we weren't successful in doing so. Maybe that's what David HaMelech meant when he wrote a pasuk in Tehillim Perek Mem, pasuk Tes. La'asos retzoncha Elokai chafatzti. Kodesh Baruch Hu, I desire to do your will. V'soirascha besoch me'ai. And your Torah is in my innards. What does that mean? What's me'ayim? Me'ai. Intestines. Normally on Shabbos we have Cholent in our intestines. This Shabbos we're going to have our Torah. Kodesh Baruch Hu, we're going to have your Torah in our innards. Why? Because la'asos retzoncha Elokai chafasi. Because I desire to do your will, Kodesh Baruch Hu. So this week I'm going to have Tanug of Shabbos, Divrei Torah, which are very, very sweet and very, very pleasurable. This time more so than Cholent. What happened is, in this Maaseh, mamish not to be believed, in the middle of the meal, the owner of the Pat Gmachs runs into the hall and says, did you eat the Cholent? Did you eat the Cholent? And they said, no, don't ask. Don't ask. The rabbi came and he explained us 8 different ways. We weren't able to be matir the Cholent. He says, Baruch Hashem. Says, why? So I just found out that we have a new cleaning lady, and she used this acidic detergent that you must soak the pots after you use it, otherwise it can be very, very dangerous to humans, and she didn't. So I came here to tell you, don't dare eat anything from the Cholent. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes has all kinds of shlichim, harbe shluchim lamakom, and sometimes he can send a fly to save you. It's a Frum fly, of course. It's important to know what the Yerushalmi says. Pilei ploi Yerushalmi Brochos, Perek Des Halacha Beis. Eliyahu Zal, Eliyahu Zichron Levrocha asked Rabbi Nehorai. Who's Rabbi Nehorai? Eruvin Daf Yud Gimel, Ratz Reb Meir. Eliyahu is asking a shaila to Reb Meir. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create shkatzim and remasim, all these creeping things of the ground? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create them? And Reb Meir, Reb Nehorai, answers Eliyahu Hanavi and he says to them, Letzorech nivru. Oh, there is a need. What's the need? The time that people sin, when we don't behave appropriately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at these flies and at these little tiny little things that we're so disgusted with, creeping things, and he says, if these things that I don't really have a need for them, I keep them, my children, that I have a need for them, how much more so? It comes that they are saving us. Next time you see a fly, you better say thank you. They are the reasons we are here. Not less important to know, a big chiddush, gigantic chiddush. Why did we come out of Mitzrayim? We always thought, what do you mean? To receive the Torah 50 days later. That's not what it says in Bab Metzia Samech Aleph Amud Beis. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when Chazal speak in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's very moving. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, if I didn't take Yisrael from Mitzrayim, only for this thing, that we have a challenge and we stay away and we don't eat shkatzim and remasim, dayi, that would be good enough for me, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I will be very happy that I took Klal Yisrael just for that reason. Pile pile ploi. Let's finish off with Parshas Para. We're going to read about Parshas Para this Shabbos. Shulchan Aruch Kuf Mem Vav, Seif Beis, and again in Tafresh Pei Aleph, Seif Gimel. Shulchan Aruch brings an opinion that some say reading Parshas Para is a deoraisa. What's the reason to say it's a deoraisa? So the Yalkut HaGershuni explains, the pasuk says, Zachor es asher hiktzavta. Remember how you angered HaKodesh Baruch Hu. The Magen Avraham in Simin Samich, Seif Ben writes, if you have a mitzvah to remember the Maaseh the Egel, so why didn't they institute us instead of Parshas Para, or instead of Shkalim, or in addition, Parshas Egel? You have 4 Parshas, have 5. Parshas Shkalim, Parshas Ha'egel, Parshas Para, Zachor and HaChodesh. Magen Avraham says, not nice. Not nice. That's Ginusan Shel Yisrael. It's derogatory to Klal Yisrael to be reading out loud. Look what you guys did. And therefore, since the Torah says, remember the Maaseh Egel, we read the Parshas Para that comes to clean the golden calf's sin. So remember, that's the reason for Chiyuv D'Oraisa. What's the source, if in fact it is from D'Oraisa? What's the source to say? So the Noisei Kerim over there in Shulchan Aruch point to the Tosfos in Brachos, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. The Tosfos writes, you must say, whatever Tosfos over there are discussing, they say it must be talking about Parshas that one is obligated to read from the Torah, like Parshas Zachor u Parshas Para. So we have a source. The Tosfos decided that there is an obligation for the Torah to read Parshas Para. What's the problem with this? The Gaon Mevina says, in our Tosfos, this doesn't appear. And he says, Nuscha Meshubeshes, Nizdam Nano La Mechaber. The Mechaber Shulchan Aruch, when he quoted this Tosfos, copied from somewhere which is a mistake. There is no such thing in the Tosfos. But in the first Tosfos that was printed ever in Shas, that in Dfus Venezia, Venice is printing in the year Reish Pei, this Tosfos does exist with this language that is quoted, and it also appears by the Tosfos of Rabbi Yehuda HaChosid and Tosfos Harosh on Maseches Brachos. And even though the Maharshal comes and erases it and it says this is a mistake, the Taz brings the Maharshal and he writes that you should not call a katan Parshas Zachor and Parshas Para because they are both in the Deoraisa, as the Mordechai says. So we have a slew of Rishonim that say it's a Deoraisa. The Nachal Eshkol, Al Hilchos Chanukah and Purim, writes, where did we get this from? It's a mistake, because in Tosfos it said, Parshas Zachor, the Pei. Rashi Tevos, Pei. So the person who opened it wrote, Parshas Para. But that's not what Tosfos meant. He meant to say, Parshas Purim. In other words, that which you read in Purim, Vayavo Amalek, that when reading this, you can also fulfill the mitzvah of Bechiyas Amalek, just like you're reading Parshas Zachor, and that's what the Tosfos meant, not Parshas Para. But the person who opened up the Rashi Tevos didn't understand. Pei, or Parshas Para, that's not what it meant. Parshas Purim, Vayavoy Amalek. Even if we're going to accept that there's a mistake in the Tosfos, it's very hard to say that all the Rishonim we just mentioned all made the mistake. So if that's the case, what is the source to say for this opinion that reading Parshas Para is Midoraisa? The Aruch HaShulchan, Siman Tafresh Pehei, Seif Zayin writes, the source for it is, it says, Lechukas Oilam in Parshas Para, twice. What do you have to say twice? Lechukas Oilam, the first one is for the first one that they did, and the second one for generations. The generations means at that time that you won't have a Para, like we don't have one today, you should read it. And that's why it says twice. But what he says is a big chiddush, because he's sort of making a drasha that Chazal didn't make. And who gave him the koyach to make a drasha? So is there any other place in the Torah that this may be alluded to, the obligation to read it from the Torah? The beginning of Parshas Chukas, we read, Vayadaber Hashem el Moshe vel Aaron, Leimo. That's the first Leimo. 2 seconds later. Zois Chukas HaTorah Asher Tziva Hashem, Leimo. Daber el Bnei Yisrael. Why do you have to say it twice? Isn't once enough? So, 3 Gdolei Olam, the Bnei Yisrael, the Avodas Yisrael, which is the Magid Mikuznish, and the Chstam Sofer, 3 coalition of 3 strong individuals, all say, why Leimo twice? wants to say to the people back then, and wants to say, for us, for generations, is the chiyuv from D'oraisa to read Parshas Para. These three Gedolei Olam thought about this on their own. Somebody once came to the stipler and said, you know, Rebbe, what you wrote in the Kiros Yaakov, I already saw your Chiddush in one very Rishonim. It's not your Chiddush. So stipler says, oh, Baruch Hashem, Givaldik. When you walk in a straight, wide street, you're going to find great friends. When you go in a crooked way, you're not going to find good people that you want to hang out with. So Baruch Hashem, when you walk in a straight path and a nice, wide street, I found some friends, great friends. Arishonim, Baruch Hashem was mechavit to the Rishonim. So these three people went on the same path, on a nice, wide path. They found each other, and they're all mechavit to it. Reb Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal, he says, a different source, the pasuk says, about the paraduma, lemishmeres lemeinida chatasi. Lemishmeres means an ongoing reminder. You have to make a constant reminder, and that is to read it every single year. The Tzitz Eliezer says, well, wait a second. If you're right, and there is an opinion that it's a D'oraisa, why don't we see women going to hear Parshas Para? We do see people reading Parshas Zacho, even though the Chazon Ish says, no, you don't need. But many do go, of course. Tzitz Eliezer asks, so why don't you see women going to hear Parshas Para? And he explains, because the Chet HaEgel was done not by women, only by men. So we have to rectify it, not them. Memele, they don't have a chiyuv, even if it's a source from D'oraisa. The source is for us to rectify what we did wrong, and not for them. אחינו כל בית ישראל הנשונים בצרה ובשביה. העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה. המקום ירחם עליהם ויוצאים מצר ולבוכם מפלו לעיר ומשובוד לגאולה אשתו בעגולו זמקורי ואינו ימר או מים. Again, next week,
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.